Ciao everyone, it's Ian here, Ian Dagara, and I'm going to talk to you about Freisa. This is our usual video series on Ian on grapes, where I tell you a little bit about grape varieties. And today I'm going to talk about an Italian grape variety called Freisa. And if you love Nebbiolo, then you probably know a little bit about Freisa already, and you probably love it too. Freisa is an exceptionally interesting grape that has the potential to give really noble wines. However, it is a very difficult grape, especially in the cellar. It's actually pretty easy in the vineyard, but in the cellar, it takes a lot of skill to make a great Freisa wine. But if you are a skilled wine producer, then you can make a wine that is as good as Nebbiolo wine, and in fact resembles Nebbiolo quite a bit. The thing to know about Freisa is that it's always been remarkably famous. In 1517, customs tariff documents showed that Freisa wines were some of the most heavily taxed because they were worth quite a bit. In the 1600s, Freisa was representing about a third of all the hectarage devoted to grapevines in the Asti and Alessandria area. So it was a remarkably popular and well-planted grape variety. We recently have known, thanks to some studies that were published in 2004, that Freisa is really the closest relative to Nebbiolo. In fact, the two share a parent-offspring relationship. And this explains why the two are in fact so similar. At least the wines certainly are. The great thing about Freisa is in the vineyard, it is remarkably rustic and resistant. It resists diseases, it resists bad weather. It's a very late ripening variety. It usually gets harvested even after Nebbiolo. And the fact that it is so hardy and rustic has unfortunately meant that Freisa has been planted in a lot of poor sites, which therefore has never really allowed Freisa to show its best. It's actually a miracle that Freisa has a good reputation for some of its wines, given that it was never planted in really the best spots, because all the best spots were and are always given to Nebbiolo. It's a grape that is, however, very rustic, and it grows like a wild vine, it behaves like a wild vine, so you're not surprised that it is as resistant as it is. The bunch is characterized by being polymorphous. In other words, on the same plant, you have different looking bunches, which is a very typical thing about Freisa. Some bunches are bigger, some bunches are smaller, different shapes. The berries are usually round, oval, but even those can change somewhat. The difficulty with Freisa is basically in the cellar. Freisa is loaded with really tough tannins. The color profile, the pigments of Freisa are again very similar to those of Nebbiolo. Like I said, Freisa is Nebbiolo's closest relative. There is in fact one other grape variety that is even closer to Nebbiolo than Freisa, and that is Nebbiolo Rosé, which we know is now a distinct variety. But if we consider Nebbiolo Rosé to be essentially similar to Nebbiolo, then really the closest relative is Freisa. But what Freisa has as a negative compared to Nebbiolo is tannins that just are very hard to render soft. So the wines can be really bitingly tannic, and a lot of people just don't like that nowadays. In an effort to curb those tannins, some producers have tried to leave a little residual sugar, so Freisa wines can be sweet. Gas, such that we have sparkling Freisa wines. Freisa has high acidity, the tannins, therefore it cleanses the palate very well, and sparkling Freisas do that even better. But clearly the best Freisa wines are the classically made still red wines that really, when well made, resemble a very great Nebbiolo wine. And with age, because Freisa wines age forever like Nebbiolo wines, then they really become very similar to Barolo. I can guarantee you that a well-made Freisa wine is basically almost indistinguishable from a well-made Barolo. In fact, everybody gets them wrong. Where you can tell them apart is that the Freisa wine will still have slightly tougher tannins than the Barolo. So what you end up doing if you're tasting them side by side, you end up picking the Barolo because of softer tannins. But it's really not easy. The perfume is the same and the color is more or less the same. Freisa can be a little darker than Nebbiolo wines. The smell, even though the name of Freisa derives from the Latin for strawberry, in fact, it isn't just a matter of strawberry. It's sour red cherries and raspberries and cranberries and sweet spices. But again, very similar profile to Nebbiolo. So Freisa, most important wines are the Freisa made in the Alba area, usually just called Langhe Freisa. The Freisa in the Asti area called Freisa d'Asti. And there is another wine called Freisa di Chieri made with they believe a biotype of the Chieri area near Turin. The main difference, it might be the biotype. Above all, it's the soil. The area around Chieri is more sandy than the area in Asti and Alessandria, which is more clay rich, and therefore the wines of Chieri are lighter, more fragrant, and the ones around Asti and Alessandria are a bit more structured and powerful. But just a beautiful wine. I really urge you to try Freisa wines because it'll open a whole new world. And if you have a little space, if you have a cellar, lay down some great Freisa wines because they will age remarkably well and you'll love them. Ciao.